Okay. Are you able to see this slide? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there are some multiple choice questions regarding the previous chapter that we have studied. Okay. So if you have clear understanding on that, then we'll move on to forward. Okay. You can type your answer in chat box, or you can speak directly. Okay. So can you answer this question? In academic research at university level, a verb best avoided in the research question is? Anup, can you say? Can you answer this question? In academic research, university level, which verb is mostly avoided in writing the research question? Anup, Apar,
Yes, sir. देखिए रहा.
Yes, sir.
can you answer this question regarding? Bobin, can you answer these questions? Are you listening to me, or there is difficulty in listening?
सुन रहा सर.
Okay. So in academic research, okay, we mostly avoid the verb to describe in the research question. Okay, it is mostly avoided in our context only. Okay, in academic research that we are going to do, we use the term to determine, to identify, to establish. Okay, or that kind of thing. That verb is mostly used in the research question. So what is the main advantage of producing a written research proposal?
और कौन रे इंग्लिश बा.
स्क्रीन देख रहा है ना अभी तो.
स्क्रीन देखिरहेको छैन?
छैन सर.
फेरि एकछिन अहिले.
देखिए सर देखिए.
Okay, so what is the main advantage of producing a written research proposal? Okay, the proposal we have prepared, what is the main advantage of producing it? Okay, it helps with the credibility, informs all interested parties, helps the institution, helps keep people employed.
Inform all interested parties in the university.
Okay, that's the answer. I'd like to move fast. Okay, so idea generation by two or more people thinking as freely as possible is formally known as the learning curve, gap analysis, brainstorming, clap trapping.
Brainstorming.
Brainstorming. Other?
Brainstorming.
Brainstorming. Other? Okay. So this is the brainstorming, yes. Another is the symmetry of the potential outcome means that the project will be reliable whatever the outcome, start with the qualitative stage and end with the qualitative stage. Okay. start with the quantitative stage and end with the quantitative stage, or will be valuable whatever the outcome. Have you known about the symmetry of potential outcome? It is mostly used in the research and project, the term.
No, sir.
Okay. Previously also I have explained at the beginning of the chapter when we study about the formulating and clarifying the research topic.
Is- Start with a qualitative stage and end with a qualitative, quantitative, quantitative.
Can you answer this question?
D.
D. Okay. Other?
D, sir.
D. You have known or you have searched in the internet.
D, sir.
Okay, it's D. Okay. The outcome, the symmetry of potential outcome means that your research should be valuable whatever the outcome. Okay, whatever the outcome there is you produce in a research, the research should be valuable, that thing. What is the difference between the research question and research objective? No difference, they are same. The question is ordered by the researcher, the objective is not. The wording of one is likely to be more specific than other, or one of these is proposed by the supervisor.
A वाला sir.
A. Okay. Other?
Sir, I think it is
Criteria. So
C.
if it was A, then there is no need to write the research question and research objective. Okay. Other? C.
C, sir.
C. Okay. Other?
B.
C. B.
B, sir.
B. The question is ordered by the researcher, the objective is not. That is the answer. You can understand this question very simply. Okay. This is not so hard question. Okay. If you eliminate what is wrong, also you can find the answer. Okay. So like look at that, like that's why. Okay. The research question and research objective, if they are same, then no need to write the research question and research objective separately in a research. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Simple logic like that. Okay. So no difference, they are same. It eliminated, it is wrong answer, because if that is true, then there is no need to write the research question and research objective separately in a research. Okay. So other is, the question is ordered by the researcher, the objective is not. That means
Yeah.
if the researcher write only questions, not the objective, okay, it is indicating like that way. The question is written by the researcher, or it is ordered by the researcher, but objective is not ordered by the researcher. That is the case, that is the case that happen in the research.
No, sir.
No, both are written by the researcher. Yes.
Researcher.
So that is also a wrong answer.
Eliminated.
And moving on to the last part. Okay, one of these is proposed by the supervisor.
Researcher
Either the
पहले
research question or
टॉपिक्स
research
निकालेर
objective is
कौन?
set by the supervisor. No.
No, sir.
Okay. So the right answer is C. The wording of one is likely to be more specific than other. Okay. Objective is the clear term, exact term. Okay, that used to describe the research question or research aim in a meaningful way, which is more specific than other. Okay. Okay. What helps to agree timing, agree resource allocation, and also drop boundaries?
The proposal.
Proposal. Yes. Other
Proposal.
Yes, sir,
proposal.
proposal.
Yes.
Observation.
No, no, no. It's proposal. Okay. Simply. All of these may appear in the research proposal, but which one will always appear?
Research objective.
Research objective. Yes. Simple. Okay. Timing section of a report will not include deadline for submitting the final report, progress report date, deadline for ending data collection, guidelines on ethics.
B, sir.
Guidelines on ethics.
Yes. Yes.
Guidelines.
Guideline on ethics. Okay. So these are just the refreshment for your old classes. Okay. Uh, Now we move on to our chapter. Okay. So previously there has been a questions, okay, regarding the positivism and realism. Okay, there is the questions that one of your friend have asked regarding the realism and positivism. Being realism and positivism, it seems to be similar. Okay, since the positivism also focus on the scientific, natural scientific instance. Okay, and the realism also focus on the scientific inquiry. Okay, so based on two part, how we can compare the different philosophy within that we have studied and other philosophy that might exist in the research. Okay, first I've already told you, you have to understand your understanding, your assumption and belief regarding the research. Okay, you might not be consciously aware of this is my ontological assumption, that is the assumption about the reality, or this is my epistemological assumption, that is the assumption regarding the knowledge development. Okay, or this is my axiological assumption regarding the values within the research. Okay, if you are not consciously aware also, okay, there is certain assumption that lies within you. Okay, there is certain assumption and belief that lies within you that direct you throughout your research. Okay, so matching your assumption and belief with the standard philosophy. Okay, standard philosophy means positivism, realism. Okay, there are different part of realism, other postmodernism, pragmatism and interpretism. Okay, different philosophy that exists, that has been practiced in many years. Okay, and so if you have your assumption and belief, and if you are aware of that type of assumption, and if you able to match that assumption or rely or comply with the standard philosophy, then that will give you the guidance for your research. Okay, that guidance will help you to choose the proper research approach for your theory development. It will help you to design your research. Okay, designing the research starts with the research strategy, choice of research. Okay, whether it is mixed, mono or multiple, include with the qualitative or quantitative. Okay, you can say also qualitative and quantitative research also. And other is the time horizon. Okay, in what duration of time you are going to collect the data for your research, and the data collection tools and technique. If you comply your research assumption and belief with the standard philosophy, then that will help you to guide your research design and method. Okay, so there is no any hard and fast rule that you should always match your assumption and belief with the standard. Okay, you can practice it anyway, but whatever, as a beginner, okay, as a beginning part of the research, if you uh, catch the one of the standard philosophy, then that will help you to guide over your research. Okay, that will be simply easy for you to cover all the step that is needed in the research. Okay, for that purpose only we study the particular research philosophy. Okay, you do not blindly choose your research philosophy without any assumption that you have. Okay, there are certain aspect of your research. Okay, that aspect need to be fulfilled by certain philosophy only. Okay, if your assumption and belief toward the research is conflict with the standard philosophy that you have chosen, then the outcome will not be generated as expected. Okay, so you should be clear. Okay, if you are not clear with the ontological assumption or axiological assumption, you should be clear on the epistemological part. Okay, that is the knowledge finding. Okay, what is the acceptable level of your finding, how you are going to find that knowledge. Okay, what is your valid knowledge, what constitutes the legitimate knowledge. Okay, this part, if you are clear regarding the findings part only, okay, if you are aware of this finding part also, you can choose the better philosophy for your research, and you can choose other step that is needed for your research, that is the research method, which is the core technical part. Yes, and other step that is needed in the research. Okay, so moving on that part, when we compare the different philosophy, we compare in three aspect. Okay, simply the three aspect, because each of the assumption, each of the philosophy is composed of three type of assumption in a research. Okay, that is the ontological assumption, epistemological assumption, axiological assumption. So most of these philosophy are compared based on these three characteristics. Okay, they might be different on the ontological aspect, they might be similar in epistemological aspect. Okay, they might be different in the axiological aspect, as they might be similar in the axiological aspect. There might be certain changes, but uh, when we move on to different philosophy, there might be a slight change in this particular assumption. Okay, yes.
स्टुडेन्टले ब्ल्याक देखाइरहेछ जस
के चाहिँ
स्टुडेन्ट के ब्ल्याक देखाइरहेछ के हजुर के गर्नु भएको
मैले सेयर चाहिँ केही नि गरेको छैन होइन म ठिक छ अहिले यो we are moving on to part. Okay, so I'm starting with some of your friend have asked about the realism and positivism are similar. Okay, they seems to be similar. Okay, but what we understand is all three aspects of the philosophy that make the philosophy, that is the ontological, epistemological, and axiological. There is slight difference in certain part also. The philosophy are different. We need to understand like that way. Okay, since positivism and realism, they mostly focus on the scientific inquiry, natural instance of scientists they are taking in the research. Okay, so in positivism, you follow the structure method for your research. Okay, there is a structure method that you need to follow in your research. Okay, and the ontological assumption, that is the, can you say what is the ontological assumption? I have already told so many times. Okay, what the ontological assumption? It is the assumption about the nature of reality. Okay, ontological assumption is the assumption about the nature of reality. Okay, so in positivism, the nature of reality is real, it might be external and independent. Okay, and when you move to the realism also, it is real. Okay, is it external? Okay, and it should be perceived by our five sense. Okay, and independent of our mind setup. Okay, so whatever the people is viewing the certain phenomena in the nature, then that reality should be perceived by our five sense in realism. Okay, that five sense means the sight, smell, taste, hear, and touch. Okay, if these five sense can perceive that reality, then that is just truth for the realistic researcher. Okay, so and the knowledge, if you go into the epistemological assumption in both this both aspect. Okay, in positivism you use the scientific method. Okay, for the obtaining the knowledge. Okay, the knowledge should be observable and measurable. Okay, it helps to produce the law like generalization in positivism. Okay, and in realism the knowledge should be independent of the mind of the researcher and other people. Okay, in this aspect. And in the axiological assumption, okay, if you use the pure realism. Okay, nowadays we are finding the two types of realism. One is the direct realism and another is the critical realism. I only focusing on the realism part only. Okay, in realism. Okay, so in axiological assumption, in positivism it is the value free, and it is in realism also it is the value free. Okay, there is certain difference in the ontological aspect. Okay, uh, in realism that it should be sensed by the five sense organ that you have, and the organ that sensation of the reality is the truth for the researcher. Okay, in positivism the external reality it is independent, and you can use the other aspect of the research dimension for analyzing that reality. Okay, both of them are little bit similar, but how we perceive the reality, okay, the mechanism of perceiving the reality is a bit of different. Okay, both they focus on the scientific inquiry as natural instance of the scientist. Okay, and so nowadays the term realism has been mostly it is not used in practice. Okay, it is not used in practice. The mostly used is the critical realism. Okay, so when we move on to the critical realism, okay, you should understand about the direct realism that we have studied, or realism only. Okay, what if our sense, okay, you understand about the positivism. Yeah, we have already discussed so much about the positivism. Yes, Sabin, should we move on to the positivism? I have already explained so lot of about the positivism. Okay, so no need to move on that part, I think, because you can understand that also. But if you study different mechanism, different philosophy, just keep in mind that these philosophy are for your understanding. Okay, for your understanding part only. There might be other explanation for that also. But in my opinion, you should study any of the philosophy in three aspects. You should dig the what is the reality for that philosophy, what is the acceptable knowledge for that reality, and what is the value position for that reality. Okay, if you study the philosophy on that aspect, in three aspects: ontology, epistemology, and axiology. And if you focus on the epistemological part also, okay, mostly, because in our level we need to generate the valid knowledge for the research. Okay, if our main concern is to produce the evidence that will support our research, okay, that will support our research question or research objective. So if you can only focus on that part only, okay, what is the valid knowledge for your research, if you can focus on that part also, then that will help you to guide to choose the proper method, whether the research choice is the qualitative, quantitative, that is the mix, mono or multiple. Okay, and the research strategy, it might be the survey, it might be the case study, it might be the experiment, grounded theory, or archival research, or action research. There are different research strategies. Okay, you can able to choose on that part. Okay, it will help to guide if you only focus on the epistemology part also, because what is the valid knowledge for your research, if you understand that part during before the conduction of the research, then you can choose what is the suitable method for generating that valid knowledge. Okay, that will guide you throughout your research. Okay, so it is your job to understand what is the valid knowledge for your research. Okay, what is the acceptable knowledge for your research, and how you know that what you know something. Okay, and you when to stop that thing, it is like the success criteria for project. Okay, when to stop the project, when you obtain the desired outcome for the research project, then you stop the project. Similarly, when you stop the research, when you obtain the valid knowledge for your research, then you stop the research. Okay, in this way you should able to know that part. If you only focus that part also, epistemological assumption regarding the research also, that then that will help you to guide throughout your research. Okay, if you neglect ontological and axiological in some part, okay, if you are able, you can use. If you are not sure, and if the duration of time is not enough to focus on that part, okay, so you should focus on the epistemological assumption also. Okay, and based on that is, as you choose the research philosophy. Okay, choosing that philosophy, you can uh, this positivism is natural scientist instance. Okay, when you move on to the interpretism, it focus on the social science. Okay, these are the two dimension of the research. Okay, it is applied natural science is the applied science and the pure science. Okay, applied science means physics, chemistry, and so on. Applied science means engineering, and this interpretism is the social science, humanities, arts, education, and different aspect. Okay, so these are totally different aspect of the research. But as a researcher, if there is certain condition that arise, if you need to use two part, okay, it might be the positivism, it might be the interpretism, you are going to use the both quantitative and qualitative research, then you can choose other research philosophy for your research. Okay, there is post positivism, which also adopts some of the characteristics of the positivism and the interpretism. Okay, you can also say the pragmatism choose the best philosophy according to the context of your research. Okay, you can go like that way. But whatever philosophy you use, there should be the logical explanation why you choose that particular philosophy for your research. Okay, you should be able to explain that part. If you are able to explain then that part, then you can use the philosophy within your research. Okay, so regarding the realism, okay, you are you clear regarding the realism, positivism, realism? or it is something away? तपाईँलाई पढ्दा पढ्दै कता पुगे जस्तो त भएको छैन नि? Okay, can you see this slide, this question?
Yes.
Okay, so can you
Sir.
answer this question? Epistemology refers to which of the following? Can you answer this question?
Acceptable knowledge in a field of study.
Yes, acceptable knowledge. Okay, so this is what we are going to focus in our research. Okay, mostly we are going to focus on this part because this will help us to guide throughout our research. So there are different major philosophical paradigm in a research. Okay, I'm talking about mostly the positivism and interpretism. There is the critical realism, post-positivism, okay, and postmodernism and pragmatism are also there are different philosophy. You can understand by studying yourself. If you understand what the basic philosophy composite of, okay, constitute, if you understand like that way, then you can understand. And mostly I have explained this two part because combinedly this part are used in our research. Okay, if the we are using positivism, okay, if we are using the positivism, suppose, okay, there is also an example I'll show you. If we adopt the positivism philosophy, then what can be your research approach? Okay, what is the research strategy, what is the choice of the research, uh, time horizon, and the data collection tools and technique. Okay, if you choose the positivism, then that will guide you throughout your the research design process. Okay, if you choose the interpretism philosophy, or if you guided by this interpretism philosophy, then what are these aspect? Okay, this aspect mean the research approach. Okay, another is the research strategy, research choice, time horizon, data collection tools and technique. Okay, if that can be related. So I have already completed this part. Okay, this part I have completed this question. If your research philosophy shows the principle of positivism, then you will probably, we have already completed this part. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, positivism completed. Post positivism you can understand. Okay, if you include the opinion and perception of the people in your research, okay, then that is the modification of the positivism. Okay, in third point, okay, I like to explain only this, focus on that point, you can understand that part. They believe that human knowledge is based not on the unchangeable rock solid foundation, but rather than the human conjugers, that is the human opinion. Okay, in positivism, as like the positivism which follow the structure mechanism, there is no any influence of the researcher and the participant at the outcome of the research or throughout the research. This post positivism focus on the human opinion also. Okay, if you use the post positivism, then you can combinedly use the positivism and interpretism as like that way. Okay, interpretism, we have finished interpretism also, yes, or have I completed this part in previous interpretism? Knowledge is dependent on people perceptiveness. Okay, knowledge cannot be measured like the measuring table. Knowledge have the multiple perspective. Understanding of the people is different, so knowledge is different to different people. One particular knowledge cannot be generalized for all. Okay, knowledge depend on the people interpretation, meaningful interpretation. Okay, people's interpretation, which is a meaningful interpretation. So when you move on to the interpretism, okay, as I have already told you, the research, the positivism is mostly guided by the pure science and applied science, which is mostly used by the natural scientists or scientists that are using. Okay, and this interpretism philosophy has been mostly used in the social science, okay, humanities, anthropologies, and so on. Okay, this field has used this interpretism philosophy throughout their research, because they assume that the knowledge cannot be measured like the measuring table, or they cannot be measured like the cause and effect relationship. Okay, there is no any such thing. Okay, so if you are going to study the phenomenon, then you should include the perception of the people. You should the interpretation of the research outcome is dependent of the opinion and values of the people. If the uh, if that way you perceive the research, then it uses the interpretism philosophy. Okay, it mostly focus on that part. So in ontology also, there is no single truth. Can you say why there is no single truth in interpretism? Since the reality of the assumption about the reality. Okay, ontology refers to the nature of the reality. If you adopt the interpretism philosophy, and if you are the interpretivist, okay, uh, as an interpretivist, there is no any single truth, because, can you say this part? If you understand this part, in positivism there is one reality. Okay, that is universalism. Okay, for the researcher perspective only. Okay, they not for others. We are only talking from the researcher perspective. Okay, if you understand that there is only one truth for the positivism, then there is no any, suppose you are the researcher, you follow the positivism and you say like that way, there is no need that others should believe on that, or others should also follow that, and other also can say there is, okay, this is the truth, only truth that you have find is real. Okay, from the researcher perspective we are using that part. Okay, or how the researcher view the world, how they see the knowledge. Okay, like that way. So this part, ontology of interpretism, it says there is no any single truth. Why that?
एउटा मात्रै ट्रुथ त हुनै सक्दैन नि सर, सिम्पल छ।
How this is the ontological assumption, is how this is the assumption about the reality. Okay, how can say that assumption about the reality, since interpretism, okay, when you see the definition of interpretism, it says that from people to people, person to person, okay, perception about the reality is different. Okay, so if you study the certain group of population, okay, from by using the interpretism philosophy, okay, you study the certain group of population in Jumla, okay, about their lifestyle, about their daily life and so on, and you conclude with the certain interpretation. Okay, you conclude with certain interpretation and find that, okay, so the quality of life on that region is good or medium or low. Okay, you cannot use that same conclusion to the Kathmandu Valley. Can you use that conclusion? If you study the same similar sample size, okay, similar sample size in Kathmandu Valley based on same question that we have asked in Jumla, also the conclusion you draw from the Kathmandu Valley and the conclusion you draw from the Jumla, okay, that are different.
यस सर,
Yes, yes, that are different
यस
based
सर,
based on your research topic. Suppose I want to study on the quality of life the people have in the Kathmandu Valley and the Jumla, okay, about their daily life, natural habitat and so on. Okay, that are mostly affected. There is might be some objective reality, or the mostly focus on the subjective reality. If I want to find on the subjective reality, that the outcome of my research is affected by the perception of the people, opinion of the people. Okay, at that time the conclusion that I draw from the research, okay, it different from one another. If I use the same method, same sample size and so on, also the conclusion I have drawn from the research will be different. So the truth is not one. Okay, for the same title that I've used to study the different region of the country, okay, the conclusion I have drawn from the study in the Jumla and I've used that study in this Kathmandu Valley, okay, the conclusion I have drawn is different. So the fact that is explored by the research is different. So there is no any single truth in the interpretism philosophy. Okay, so the interpretivists assume that there is no single reality or single truth in the research there are multiple truths, okay, that need to be explored, and that is dependent on the perception of the people, opinion of the people within the study. Okay, did you understand this part?
Yes, sir.
So can we move on to the, there is the epistemology of the assumption, you can study by yourself. Okay, we are moving on to this part because we have spent so much time on this section. uh, the cycle of the research. Okay, there if you focus on the two part, ontology and epistemology, that will guide you throughout your research methodology and helps to choose the method for your research. Okay, I'm focusing on these two part only because positivism and interpretism, this is mostly used research philosophy in a research. Okay, mostly used, and it is simple to use. Okay, it gives you the clear guidance about what are the technical, what are the method that you need to choose in your research. Okay, since the positivism, whether you conduct a survey or doing the infographic, depends on the which paradigm you follow. Okay, that is the research strategy. Means uh, the philosophy will guide you what research strategy you need to choose, what is the choice of the research. Okay, I'm again focusing on this part, and so on. Okay, further it dig on to the research onion and help you to choose the that proper data collection technique for your research, since the positivism leads to the quantitative research and interpretism leads to the qualitative research, which is positivism is the objective and interpretism is the subjective. Okay, so this is the example. Okay, this is the example I have taken from the um, TU professor. Okay, TU professor currently studying in this part. uh, the effect of the title of the research is the effect of the COVID-19 is household economy of middle class people, a survey of Kathmandu metropolitan city. Okay, or you can say is like a narrative study of or an interpretive inquiry. Okay, that is the construct that we use in the title. Okay, so for methodology part, okay, consider your research question. What we have to do for our method, we have to first write the research question. Okay, simply, other part also there, but for clear understanding, you can, if you know about the research question, then you can choose the research paradigm or research philosophy for your researcher. Write the philosophical underpinning. Okay, what is the theory that what is the reason you choose that particular philosophy, what lies within that philosophy. Okay, and you go for the research design, and while you design for the research, from it starts with the research strategy. Okay, in the onion layer there is two aspect. One is the research philosophy and research approach that is mostly used at the higher level, and for the research design it starts from the research strategy, choice of the research, time horizon, and data collection tools and technique. Okay, this four part is mostly used in the research design, and you have to discuss the technical part: source, sample, tools, data collection technique, data analysis strategy. Okay, your quality standard means the reliability, validity, replication, conformity, and so on. You have to consider that part and go for the ethical concern within your research. Okay, this is for methodology. And linking your research question. Okay, all this part is related to the research question. Based on the research question that we have written, that will guide you what kind of research philosophy that you need to choose within your research. Okay, the tools you are going to use in your research, the data collection method also, and data analysis tool. Okay, so relation between, okay, if you want to find the relation between earning per month and saving pattern of household, a survey of middle class people in Kathmandu Valley or metropolitan city. Okay, in this topic one of your research question will be, this is just an example. Okay, this is mostly done by the research in economics. Okay, in MPhil and masters economics. So what is the correlation between the amount of earning per month and the saving pattern of the household? Okay, you should not understand in deep way about the what the title says, but what is, what we need to understand is, if the research question start with the what. Okay, ws question, what question. Okay, other also start with the what, but if you start with what is the correlation, it start with the what, then it mostly focus on the quantitative part of the research. Okay, quantitative means some measurable fact within your research. Okay, if you if you are going to study this part, okay, your philosophical underpinning is the post positive one. Okay, because the pattern you are going to follow, okay, it might be affected, you might follow the certain structure, okay, and in some way the outcome of the research will be affected by the opinion and people of the uh, participant. Okay, and your research uh, paradigm will be post positivism, your design will be quantitative research. Okay, whether I say quantitative or qualitative. Okay, if you post since you might be confused, since post positivism also focus on the opinion of the people, but positivism do not do that. Okay, it is the value free, but post positivism is somewhere value laden, means your outcome of the research will be affected by the opinion of the people. But saying that, okay, saying that also you can design your research through quantitative way, because uh, it calculate in that way, in total part of your research. Okay, if my quantitative research part is 90 to 90%, then I can conclude that my research is the quantitative research. Okay, if my 92 if I use the 20 question, only the last question is the open-ended question which focus on the qualitative data. At that time also I can say my research design as the quantitative research, since the weight of the quantitative research is quantitative data in my research is more than the qualitative data. Okay, and your data collection tool, simply that tool is should be the strategy. So, okay, that survey, and when you use the survey, there is the questionnaire and interview that you are going to use as the data collection technique. Okay, your data analysis technique will be calculation of correlation coefficient. This is related to the economics. Okay, your theory may be rational choice of theory or permanent income hypothesis. That is also related to the title. What we need to understand is, if the research question is what, okay, you mostly going to focus on the positivism or post positivism. Okay, uh, because what is the correlation between earning amount per month, okay, and saving pattern of the household, that is find the relation between the cause and effect. Okay, this is focusing on the cause and effect. And when you say that cause and effect, okay, there is the dependent and independent variable, you might occur that thing also while you study. There is a dependent and independent variable in this context. Okay, the COVID-19 and household economy. COVID-19 is the independent variable and household economy is the dependent variable. Yes, you should also be understand like that way. Okay, uh, in positivism you are going to find the pattern or a relation between these two variable. Okay, dependent variable and independent variable, you are going to find the relation between these two aspect or two variable. We are going to find the cause and effect relationship using the positivism philosophy. Then in this case, the independent variable is the COVID-19, because it is cannot be controlled from the perspective of the researcher, or cannot be manipulated. Okay, cannot be changed or manipulated. But what can be manipulated is the income. Okay, it is the variable, dependent variable, because it depend on the independent variable, simply like that. Okay, the saving is dependent on the COVID-19 in current context of the study. Okay, and this same title can be uh, studied another way. Okay, if your research question is how do middle class people perceive saving, how do they relate this with their earning. Okay, if your research question on how and why, okay, it mostly focus on the interpretism. Okay, your philosophical underpinning interpretivist one, your research paradigm will be interpretism, your research method will be qualitative, your data collection tools and technique that you are going to use in-depth interview. Okay, and analysis technique will be thick description. This is related to the economics. Okay, this is related to that part. So your that philosophical understanding or underpinning will guide you throughout your research, what kind of research method that you need to choose. Okay, and what is the data collection tools and technique that you need to choose, that will be guided by the philosophy, and that philosophy will be guided by the research question. Okay, and that research question also again guided by the assumption and belief that you have initially at your research. Okay, so this is the part. And when you write the analysis section, okay, if you are quantitative research, this is just the analysis part. We'll come to know this part in the detail in coming lecture. Okay, in methodology also you should, I have already told you, you should be able to clarify about data collection tool, data analysis technique, and so on. Okay, in data analysis technique, if you are using the quantitative research, then you should able to indicate what is the data validation for your research. Data editing, okay, means when you, it is something, there is no some error, data error or some lagging within that data. Okay, data coding is related to the typology of the research. Means suppose you use the 20 to 30 questions, okay, 20 to 30 questions, then each analysis of each individual question is difficult for the researcher and others. Okay, and understanding that part, so you group the certain question based on the certain characteristics. Okay, example, if you collect the information regarding the name, address, age, phone number, and so on, this information is related to the personal information. You can group this information as the personal information. Okay, and you can make other like personal habit or use of tech. Okay, and like, so like that way you can categorize the part and you can group the number of question on that section. Okay, in that way you can use the term data coding. Okay, how you are going to use that coding, you need to explain on that, and which statistical tool you are going to use to analyze the data. Okay, it is the statistical tool, mean, median, mode, standard deviation. You can use any of those based on the necessity of your research. Okay, if you are going only find the average, what is the average people that you are, that are using the technology, and then you use the mean for that case. Okay, and like that. In qualitative research, there is a coding, generating theme from your idea. It is a ethnographic, narrative, phenomenological, disclosure, grounded theory. These are the part of the qualitative research. Okay, part means these are the strategy. Okay, these are the strategy for the qualitative research. And you in methodology chapter, okay, while writing the methodology chapter, you recap of your research question. Okay, you should uh, um, explain a little bit about what you are going to achieve in the research or what is the purpose of your research. Okay, there should be a bridge between your literature review and methodology. Means there is certain past research that has been done. Okay, there is certain knowledge gap on that research, and you, for that fulfilling that knowledge gap, you choose the particular methodology. Okay, if you can relate that thing, then the literature review that you have indicated in previous chapter will be linked to the method that you have chosen. Okay, and your ontological or epistemological assumption of the research. If you are not clear regarding the ontology also, you should be able to clear about the epistemology. Okay, because the what is the acceptable knowledge, what is the valid knowledge for your research, you should be able to understand that part. And your design of the research, there that this design is the method part that I have explained previously. Yes, the technical part. Okay, this focus on the technical part, the background and rationale of your design, why you choose the particular method, why tools and technique and so on. You have to give the proper explanation for that. Okay, and quality standard for your research, reliability, validity, conformability, replicability, and so on. Okay, and if there is any ethical concern regarding the research, you should also indicate that part in the methodology section. Okay, so you can write the methodology in this way. Okay, in final report also. Okay, if you have written, if you have already submitted the proposal, okay, those who have already submitted the proposal, please do not edit on that part. Whatever the uh, refinement that you need to do, please do on the final report. Okay, you can do this part things at the final report. Those who do not have submitted the proposal in hard copy. Okay, those who have already submitted the hard copy in the hard copy of the proposal, please do not edit your proposal. Okay, you should focus on the final report that need to be submitted in this semester. Okay, clear? Those who have submitted, let it be submitted. Okay, you can do all the refinement, that methodology section, research question section, and so on. That refinement you should do in the final report and submit at the end of this semester. Okay, so
तपाईँले फिडब्याक दिनुभएकोले नि चेन्ज नगर्ने
फिडब्याक मैले फिडब्याक दिएको चेन्ज गर्ने, तर प्रपोजलमै फेरि चेन्ज गरेर प्रपोजल नबुझाउने, त फाइनलमा इन्क्लुड गर्ने भन्नु खोजेको कि जसले चाहिँ हार्ड कपी बुझाइसक्नु भएको छ नि।
ओके
किनभने इन्ट्रोडक्सन पार्ट यु निड टु इन्क्लुड इन द फाइनल। ओके, methodology part, all this part you need to include at the final report. ओके, त्यो फाइनल रिपोर्टमा राख्दाखेरि नै त्यो रिफाइनमेन्टलाई युज गरेर राख्ने भने कि जसले हार्ड कपी बुझाइसकेको छ, जसले बुझाएको छैन चाहिँ प्रपोजल प्रिन्ट गरेर त्यो फिडब्याक सहित बुझाउँदा राम्रो हो होइन। जसले चाहिँ हार्ड कपी बुझाइसकेको छ भने उसको प्रपोजल त सबमिट भइसक्यो एकचोटि होइन, उसले फाइनल रिपोर्टलाई मात्रै फोकस गर्नु पऱ्यो क्या।
ओके सर
है, किनभने प्रपोजलको हामीले युज नगर्ने भनेको या त फाइनल रिपोर्ट यु सुड नट इन्क्लुड द timeline, okay, timeline of your research. Okay, you should not include your timeline because timeline, when the research complete, that there is no need to show the timeline of the research because it is the planning of your research. Okay, there is a practice to show the timeline in the midterm defense, that is the middle progress of your research in university level, but in our context there is only the final report that you need to submit. So it is not necessary to include the timeline at the final of your report. Okay, all other part you need to include. Okay, introduction part, literature review, significance of the research that you are going to use, of or something like that. Okay, related theory, if you are using most of the theory, then you can also separate the chapter for your related theory section, and you can use the methodology after that. Okay, chapter methodology and finding. Okay, the discussion, result, discussion and interpretation, or finding and result, interpretation and discussion, and you can also finally write the conclusion of the research. And if there is any further recommendation and limitation, you can also include that part after the finding and discussion. Okay, and finally conclusion. Most of the researcher or research report include the recommendation and limitation part at the conclusion, but if it is best practice to include that recommendation and limitation before the conclusion, and if you focus on what method you have used and what kind of findings you have generated from your research, and just focus on that part and you can write the conclusion. Okay, so regarding the method of the research, are you clear? Now on we move on the research design. Okay, this part is clear. This part give you overall insight of the research design and method also. Okay, this slide. If you have any questions regarding this part, are you clear regarding the method of the research, how we start, what are the technical part that we need to include in the research method chapter in your report? Yes,
yes sir
if you have any question, you can ask me. You should be clear on this part. Okay, methodology part, because uh, if you are not clear or if you have little bit confusion, okay, then you cannot choose the right data collection method and so on, and your research outcome will be diverted from the research objective or research question that you have stated in the previous or first in the introduction section. Okay, all the things, the research questions should be linked throughout your research. Okay, you are going to find the answer for that questions. Okay, and all the method, all the literature, all the technical part of the research should always be focused on how to answer that particular research question. Okay, so research question is always related with the every section of the research. Okay, you should keep on your mind what is the answer you are going to explore from your research. Okay, for that questions, or what is the research objective that you are going to fulfill through your research. Okay, or you are going to achieve through your research, that should be keep on your mind. Okay, when you collect the data and if you find that the collected data or evidence that you have collected from your research, if that evidence does not support your objective, then you have to make the decision whether I have to change the objective, refine the objective based on the title. Okay, there is certain flaws. Okay, you should be remember on that. The evidence you have collected, okay, if the evidence you have collected does not helps to achieve the objective, then there is certain flaw either in the objective or either in the question you have built. Okay, you should identify where that flaw is and you should refine that section and again move on to the data collection part. Okay, you should be able to know the data collected or the fact you have find should support the research objective that we have stated. Okay, we are only comparing that part. If anybody who is not technical part of the research also, they can relate the findings of your research with the research question or objective. Okay, if the technically they are not aware of your research topic also, but they can ask the question, uh, the what is the evidence of this particular questions you have said. Okay, they can ask like that way also. So you should be able to relate your fact and finding with the research question and objective that you have stated and the introduction part of your research. Okay, so this much for today. We'll also start a research design and data collection, collection and analysis method on the next class. Okay, if you have any question, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll stop this class right now and we'll start the research design in next class, that is on Friday.